The place where Jesus of Nazareth died was not a majestic hill on the outskirts of the city. It did not look like the medieval paintings. It was not a place of dignity or solemnity. It was an abandoned limestone quarry at the foot of a public road where the Romans executed criminals on a skull-shaped rock so that everyone passing by could watch them die. And it is beneath a church in Jerusalem right now. You can touch it. What nobody tells you is this. The name Golgotha, meaning place of the skull in Aramaic, probably did not refer to a hill shaped like a skull. It referred to a flat rock shaped like the top of a human cranium, approximately 5 meters high, that jutted out of the floor of an abandoned quarry. The quarry had been abandoned because the limestone in that zone was poor quality, full of cracks and defects. One of those cracks is the fracture the Gospels describe as appearing in the rock at the moment of Jesus' death. The crack exists. It is visible today in the Chapel of Golgotha, in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Subscribe now. The button is right below the video. All 4 Gospels use the same term to describe the place of the crucifixion. In Aramaic, Golgotha, Golgotha. In Greek, cranion, skull. In Latin, Calvaria, Calvary. All mean the same thing, place of the skull. The most widespread popular explanation is that it was called that because it was a skull-shaped hill when seen from a distance. This interpretation was popularized by British General Charles Gordon in 1883, who identified a rock formation north of Jerusalem's Old City, the so-called Garden Tomb, as the true Golgotha, because from a certain angle the rock resembled a skull. Modern archaeology has rejected Gordon's site as anachronistic. The nearby tombs are from the First Temple period, centuries before Jesus, but the image of the skull-shaped hill persists in popular imagination. The archaeologically stronger explanation is different. The area of the Holy Sepulchre was in the past a limestone quarry, when the quarry was abandoned, probably in the 1st century BC. It left an irregular topography with elevations and depressions. One of those elevations was a rock protrusion, approximately 5 to 12 meters high, that emerged from the flat surface of the abandoned quarry. That protrusion had a rounded shape at its upper portion, similar to the dome of a human skull when seen from ground level. It was not a complete hill. It was an isolated rock, outcropping on the flat ground of the quarry, and it was in a highly visible location, beside the northern wall of Jerusalem, next to one of the main roads in and out of the city. The Romans chose execution sites with precise criteria: maximum public visibility and logistical accessibility. Golgotha met both conditions. John 19:20 confirms it with precision. Many of the Jews read this inscription, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, not on a distant hill, near the city, beside the road. To understand Golgotha, you first need to understand what was there before Golgotha, a quarry. The zone where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre stands today was for centuries a limestone quarry. Jerusalem limestone. The meleke, the royal stone, was the primary building material of the city. Quarries were typically just outside city walls to facilitate transport of blocks. This specific quarry was abandoned, according to archaeological analyses, probably in the 1st century BC, before the Herodian period. The reasons: the limestone of this particular zone had poor quality. It was full of fissures and defects that made extracted blocks unreliable for construction. Blocks that cracked in the quarry were unusable. When the quarry was abandoned, the terrain retained a particular topography. The vertical extraction walls created exposed rock faces. The ground was irregular, with heaps of quarry waste. And the rock formations the quarrymen had left intact because they were poor quality, including the outcropping that would become Golgotha, protruded from the flat ground. This abandoned quarry was gradually converted into a garden, according to John 19:41. In the place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden, a new tomb in which no one had yet been laid. Abandoned quarries in the ancient world were frequently converted into gardens and cemeteries. The same area that had the Golgotha outcropping also had tombs carved into the quarry walls and cultivated zones. The crack in the rock of Golgotha. The crack visible today in the Golgotha Chapel, in the Holy Sepulchre, is a natural fracture in the limestone, exactly the type of defect that would have led quarrymen to discard that rock. When Matthew 27-51 describes that the earth shook and the rocks were split, the existing crack in that already defective rock is the physical evidence of that type of seismic event. Roman crucifixion was not simply a form of execution. It was a form of execution specifically designed to be public, prolonged, and maximally degrading. Cicero called it the most cruel and horrible of torments. It was never applied to Roman citizens, only to slaves, lower-class criminals, and rebels in subjugated provinces. The process had specific steps. The condemned was first flogged with the flagrum, a multi-thong whip with lead balls or bone tips at the ends, enough to weaken but not kill. Then he was forced to carry the patibulum, the horizontal crossbar, not the complete cross, to the execution site. At the site he was nailed or tied to the patibulum and then raised to be fixed to the stipes, the permanent vertical post planted in the ground at the execution site. Archaeology has confirmed the technical details. The only skeleton of a Roman crucifixion victim found to date, Yehohanan, found at Givat HaMivtar in Jerusalem in 1968, had an iron nail through the lateral calcaneus. His arms were not nailed, but probably tied. The position of the nail in the heel confirms that the feet were nailed from the sides, not through the instep. Golgotha, as an execution site, had an essential physical element: the permanent posts, the stipes, that remained planted in the ground between crucifixions. The condemned did not carry a complete cross to the site. The weight would have been impossible even for a healthy man. What they carried was the patibulum, approximately 30 to 50 kilograms. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre preserves the Rock of Golgotha with its flat surface and its crack. Archaeologists have identified cavities in the rock consistent with the holes where the permanent crucifixion posts were planted. That is not speculation. It is the physical evidence of the most important execution site in history. A Roman crucifixion at Golgotha in the 1st century did not happen in silence. Golgotha was beside the main road that entered and exited Jerusalem from the north, the road toward Caesarea Maritima and northern Palestine. During Passover, with the city full of pilgrims, that road had constant traffic. Passers-by watched the crucifixion as they passed. This is not incidental. It is part of the Roman design. Crucifixion was state propaganda. This is what happens to those who challenge the empire. Its location beside the city entrance road guaranteed the message reached the maximum possible number of people. The Gospels describe the social environment of Golgotha with details that confirm exactly this reality. Matthew 27-39. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads. The passers-by, those going along the road. Crucifixion as a passing spectacle. Also present were the Roman soldiers, probably 4, according to documented practice, assigned to guard the execution and ensure no rescue attempts were made. They cast lots for the condemned man's garments. And there were the women. The Gospel of John places them beside the cross, standing firm. In that cultural context, the men had fled. The women remained. They were at a distance, close enough to hear the words from the cross. Golgotha also had another social element the Gospels reflect: the adjacent cemetery. Jewish tombs of the period, including the one Joseph of Arimathea offered for the burial, were carved into the walls of the same quarry. The place of execution and the place of burial were meters apart. John 19:40, 1:4-2 confirms it, because the tomb was close by. Golgotha was, in a single relatively small area, a skull-shaped rock, an execution space, a garden cemetery, a heavily traveled public road, a place of death at the edge of the city of life. The Rock of Golgotha still exists. It is not a legend, not a reconstruction. It is the original 1st century limestone, identified in the 4th century by Empress Helena as the site of the crucifixion, sealed beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre from the 4th century to today. The Golgotha Chapel is on the second floor of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, accessible by a steep stone staircase. The space is divided between two of the 6 communities that share the church. On the right, the Franciscan Catholic altar of the crucifixion. On the left, the Greek Orthodox altar of the nailing of the cross. Beneath the Greek altar, there is a hole in the floor, surrounded by silver. Pilgrims put their hand into that hole to touch the original limestone surface, not the marble covering it, the rock itself, and the crack is visible. A diagonal fracture running through the rock from top to bottom, visible through a glass panel beneath the Greek side altar. It is a natural crack in the limestone of the type that makes quarrymen abandon a block. It is the crack Matthew associates with the earthquake at the moment of death. Notice this detail. A few meters away, on the floor of the Anastasis Rotunda, stands the edicule, covering the tomb, Golgotha and the sepulchre, together in the same building. The rock of the crucifixion and the rock of the resurrection, separated by 30 meters of corridor and 16 centuries of history. We have reconstructed Golgotha today with archaeology, geology, Roman history, and textual interpretation. And what emerges from that reconstruction is a place more human and darker than any artistic representation. It was not a majestic hill on the horizon. It was an abandoned quarry beside the road, with a skull-shaped rock that passers-by knew. The place where the Romans executed the condemned in public so that everyone entering and leaving Jerusalem would see the cost of resistance. It was a place of shame, not glory. Roman crucifixions were designed precisely for that. Maximum public humiliation, slow death, in the sight of all. The condemned was exposed naked, hung between heaven and earth, neither in the city nor outside it, in that liminal threshold where the impure and the cursed were left. Deuteronomy 21:23 says, "A hanged man is cursed by God." In the honor and shame system of the first-century Jewish world, dying on a cross was the most complete form of defeat and disgrace that existed. Paul captures it in Galatians 3:13. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. And yet that specific place of shame, beside the road, in a poor quality stone quarry with a defect crack that made it useless, is the place that 16 centuries of Christian faith have covered with the most visited church in the world. There is something in that paradox that says more about the gospel than any sermon. The most humiliating place in the ancient world became the most sacred place in the Christian world. The defective rock, the rock the quarrymen rejected, became the Calvary. The image in Psalm 118-22 resonates differently when you know Golgotha. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep seeing the Bible from where history and archaeology illuminated in ways no sermon can reach. See you in the next one.